Roosters, their first 5 rounds, the Broncos at home, Panthers away, Warriors away, Titans at home, South away. Not a, uh, I've seen better starts, but it's not the worst start either. Like, obviously, the first 2 games are going to be probably tough, and then go from there. What are we thinking here, boys? I'm going to have to actually turn the reins over to one of you guys to go through the positions because I can't use my phone because it's using my light. So, Jesse, if you're able to turn into sort of the host, I guess, in a way, that'd
Yeah,
be
man.
awesome.
Of
On the
course.
spot, changing out. This is fantastic. I hope you all enjoy this one.
Yeah. So in the hooker spot, we've got Tyler Moriarty at 198k. Sandon Smith with a dual half as well at 237. Brandon Smith at 400.9k, and Connor Watson, 2RF and hooker at 583. Um, I'm just going to go straight to you, Trav. The hookers. Obviously, we've got no Brandon Smith. Realistically, we don't have, well, I say we as the Roosters, we don't really have a hooker right now. We've got Connor Watson, and I don't really see him sharing minutes with anyone because I don't really see anyone else taking him off him. So are we going into this with an 80-minute Connor Watson at hooker?
I was just going to say, I was going to cut you off before because you said we don't really have a hooker, and then I went, hang on, are you forgetting that you've got frigging Connor Watson, probably the best best utility in the comp? And and then I just thought, and then you mentioned him, and I'm like, oh yes, that. And now, so to answer your question, yes, you've got an 80-minute hooker in Connor Watson to play the year, and how bloody exciting is that for everybody as a in Supercoach, and how much does that how much does that put him on your radars? He isn't on my radar, but God, he's on 18%. He's owned by 18% at the moment. So I think that just speaks volumes around what he can do and what he's going to do. 18%, just so everyone knows, is actually in the top 25 players, I think, from memory. So 18% is really well owned.
Yeah, it's quite a lot. And he has only played 2 games at hooker last year for the Roosters. Everything else was sort of interchange and lock, but he rotates so much, so his stats are quite hard to work out. But sorry, what did he know? He played 4, but a couple of patchy minutes, but 3 of them 70 points, 58 points, 53 points. Man, I just see great value. He's in my team at the moment. I was able to find a bit of extra coin, and I went straight up to him. And I really like having those dual with the hooker slots, especially with Sandon Smith there too. So I can just pick one, kind of move things around a little bit. But I like it. I think he's got a great deal of upside. Yeah, I can't find any reason to knock it. It's a lot of money to spend up at hooker, but he's a jewel. He's a second.
Did you put him in hooker?
Yeah. I've got him at hooker. So, yeah. What about you, Joel? What do you reckon on just the hookers in general? Watson specifically, I'd say.
Yeah, look, Watson's not the one I want to talk about, but I can kind of see where you're going with it. At the same time, I'm just so headstrong on Brayley at the moment. I just really want to just pick him and just leave him and don't have to worry about hooker and let obviously my second choice, which will be Sandon Smith, sitting there, hopefully gaining quite a fair bit of cash this year. That's just what I'm looking at moving forward for that position. So I don't really want to overthink it at all. I'm sick of it. I did a bit last year and got a bit mixed up with it all. So I want to talk more so Sandon Smith. And you mentioned, I think, a bit earlier when we were talking about the Cowboys, this whole weird and wacky thinking you've got about, I know on the screen there it says the dual cheapie we need. Goal kicking as well, potentially. I think that's almost certain now. I think it's almost been confirmed by the Roosters. And he's obviously got the hooker half dual, but you seem to have another extra little dash thing there, and you want to put flex.
Yeah, I just think he gives you a lot of options. It gives you the possibility to move a cheaper hooker out. If, say you don't want to run Iongi, you want to watch and see what happens, you can put Sandon Smith there in the flex, and then you can bin one of your cheap hookers and get him. If prices come through and Iongi breaks out first 2 rounds and he's got a mad break even, sweet, just drop one of your cruddy hookers that you weren't really doing much with, move Sandon Smith up there and get a Iongi in. You just got to wait and see what happens there. Look, his value is massive. In 80-minute games, mainly at half, between 23 and 24, average 53.9 So, we're talking near bottom dollar, dual position, bank, and he's kicking too, and he wasn't in those games. So, yeah, man, he could be anything. Like, he could be huge. And he's the most owned player in Supercoach right now. I believe at 56%, which will probably just go up. I don't understand what the other people not having him are doing. Like, it should be a 90% ownership. Like, I just can't see any reason to not have him. There's so much
money.
upside there. It genuinely is. Yeah. It's just screaming.
Do you slot him in your halfback or hooker? Where do you think's best?
I've currently got him in hooker. But at the same time, like, I'm running with dual Roosters hookers currently. But again, this changes daily, so I don't take too much. But, it just depends on what the other hookers look like. I want to see what the whole Mamazelis thing looks like. Moser's been on, people are talking a lot about Moser right now too. So outside of the cheapies for the hooker slot, I don't really think there's too many options outside of those two. But again, I don't expect them to play big minutes, and I expect 80 from him. I expect 80 from Watson. Like, there's a lot more upside with those two and a lot less of a headache. And that's why, if you were going to do that dual thing around and you do have a Mamazelis and he just doesn't do what we expect him to do, you can move him on and still cover that spot. So
I think, and we'll talk about this more when we get to the Rabbitohs. I think it's next week. Oh, whenever it is, sorry. But I think Mamazelis is a bit of a trap. I think the Humphreys play there is just going to be annoying, and Mamazelis isn't cheap, like fully cheap. Like, he's 300 odd K, early 300K. So I'm just not sold on it. I think Sandon Smith's best spot is the hooker spot. And I actually hear something for you, which you're going to find funny after how you spoke about Connor Watson. But I've become much more higher on Connor Watson than I am on IPAP. And I think that Connor Watson should be a better pick than IPAP, and I would prefer that he would be in my 2RF than my hooker. But I'm also the same with Joel, is that I'm very high on just plugging Brayley and just sitting there for the year with him. So I want to do that. So I'm actually thinking I might change, or either I try and find the way to make Connor Watson my third 2RF, or I change IPAP to Connor Watson. I think it's a really good play. The more I've researched and what I'm getting from Watson, knowing that he's an 80-minute hooker at that Roosters team at this point, I think this is a bit of a no-brainer play.
Yeah, I love it. I think he's got a lot to prove up there too. 80 minutes is so good. Man, Cheese can stay on the sidelines for a little longer, unfortunately. We can go. Is there nothing else really in the hookers? They're pretty good options at the moment. Front row. Xavier Va'a, 198K. Ethan Roberts, 198. Va'a again, there's brothers, both of them, 232. Then we get into the appealing ones right here. Nafahu White, dual position, 367. Spencer Leniu at 393 and Lindsay Collins at 422. They're cheap. These guys are cheap. Lindsay Collins with a 43 average is a massive drop on what he does, in the past in general. But the dearest front rower in that team is 422, and I can make an argument to start with any three of them. And I've currently got White in my side as well. Not so much on the others, but Trav, what do you reckon about just the prop situation with the Roosters and like the rotation side of things? Because there's not many left.
No, there's a point here on the slideshow, mid-range team to target, and here's the start, right? They've got mid-range prices or cheap prices across the board, and front row forward is it. Nafar White, 31% owned, played 20 games last year, 367. He's going to get more minutes this year. He's projected to start. I think he's a no-brainer as a cheapie just to plug on your bench. He's also the dual 2F FRF. I think he's the better play at FRF at this point, and he's my fourth FRF. That's just an exciting pick, and I'm keen to get that. The next one up is Spencer Leniu, and there's lots of chatter around Spencer Leniu and what he can do. 393, 6% owned at the moment, so there are a few people taking a bit of a gamble on him. Someone's got to step up for everything that's happened and what's left the Roosters, and we all know that Leniu's a beast, yeah? So he's an absolute monster. I think he's got potential, at least, even if he only sort of pushes maybe to a 50, that's still a big price rise for us. And in that front row forward, that's gold mine, right? If he can get himself to around that 500K, by that point in time, we're able to bank some money there. That's definitely a good opportunity to upgrade to anyone, really, I think. So I think Lenu's really hard to pass, but a really good option. And I'll let you talk more about Lindsay Collins, because I know you're quite high on him with some of the talk that you've been talking about.
Me or Joel?
Jesse.
Yeah, well, like Collins just traditionally is a workhorse. And I just think his output was so low in general when you start looking at these sort of things. He averaged 54.8 in 2023, and it was on a back of a 57-minute sort of average for the season. So it was solid with a 51 base. So that base dropped by 7 points. It's quite significant, for no real particular reason. I can see him being the guy that steps up. I look at Lenu. He's played 4 games over 45 minutes ever. You know what I mean? And that's between the Panthers and the Roosters. There's not many to choose from. Quite low output, low base. He's an impact guy. So it's going to be a big shift for him. And I really wanted to see Terrell May there, obviously. But again, we can't keep flogging that horse. He's gone and he's still locked into my side. But yeah, just on Lenu's 4 games over 45 minutes, it was a 51 average of minutes, and he averaged 33 in base. So it's low. It's not good. There's not really any attacking upside there. He's exciting to watch. I think he's got a great game about him, in the real life sense of things, but I just don't think he translates very well at all. I think when it comes down to it, I think Collins probably would more so, just in work rate. But yeah, White's the guy. Nafahu White's sort of where I'm looking at. The dual position's really nice. He's cheaper than the other two. But I do expect Collins. I can see him making 100K way, way sooner than I can see Lenu pushing up any higher than he sort of is at the moment. So, yeah, and 1% owned on Collins too. It's nothing. Not exciting, but definitely a safe play. You can't really do much worse than what he's on at 422K. What about you, Joel? What do you reckon?
I think you both covered pretty much everything. What I'll say more so sort of at an NRL point of view is they've also not just lost May, they've lost Jared Hargraves. They've lost a big chunk of minutes there between both of those. And the big thing with May was he was always the one that would fix if there was an early injury, a HIA, things like he'd go, Robson would throw him on and just go play me 60-odd minutes. You look at the players now that they've got, the one player that probably you could get that out of because he's done it in the past is Collins. And you probably, if we're thinking out loud, it probably was his quietest year, I reckon, so far in a number of years for Collins. I used to rate him really, really highly, up there with the top props in the game. After last year, that's probably come back a little bit, and I think there's been a few more that have just gone ahead of him. So I think he'll have a point to prove. I think he'll feel that this year as well, being that main guy there at the pack. He's been at the Roosters now for a while, so I reckon he will step up. I think that's a great pod sort of play, and it's not an expensive pod play either. Like, it's someone that you can get away with. It fits in quite nicely. It's probably your second prop there next to May, and sort of away you go with it. Like, if he can get you that 50-odd points, you're laughing every week. Just get him to do his thing. Spencer's a funny one because it just feels like, I remember this time last year we spoke about Spencer going, oh, yep, get him in your team. He's got to explode now. Now he's got 2 less members to sort of compete with, but we're sort of still sitting here going, oh, don't know. I don't think anything can happen here because he is so good at that impact player role. Like, get him on for a 30-minute stint. He tears the place apart. Bring him off before he does something too stupid to get suspended for 5-6 weeks. So, but that's just him, and he does it so well. So don't swallow your pride a little bit. I know all these players want to be starting, but that's his role. Let Nafahu maybe start at the start and see what he's doing. Nafahu, I'm with you. Nafahu is the one that I'm really keeping an eye on as well. And just sort of that duel is huge. And I think it's probably to start the year, one big thing I recommend is trying to get those dual players as many as you can, especially when there's one where it's quite close price-wise. If there's one player there with a dual, that should be getting your vote every time because it helps you and frees you up so much down the track throughout the year to make other different moves and things like that.
Yep. And just on the Fahu White as well, I'm sort of going into the thing expecting or hoping to see him get a starting lock position. We might see Radley on the edge like he was last season, but it just depends. I think that'll be the next point when we get into the 2 RFs. In 40-plus minute games for Nafahu White, averaged 50.7. Last year had a 68-minute game, average scored 73, 54 scored 53, 43 scored 51, 46 scored 35. They're at lock. So massive, the potential.
Come on down.
It's huge.
Yeah.
With a dual, mid 300s, I just think you can't really go wrong with it. Anything else, boys? Front row?
I'm with you, Captain.
We'll move on. Second rowers. Geez, it's a bit thinner, but there's still plenty of them. Ethan Roberts, 198. Blake Steep, 232. Egan Butcher, 310. God, he's dropped a bit. CR Wong, 318. Nafahu White, obviously, we just spoke about him. Victor Radley, 542K. Nat Butcher, 553. Connor Watson, again at 583. And the big man, Angus Crichton, at 758.7. The number one, 2RF.
Big dog.
Trav. Yeah, the big dog. Trav, take us away, mate.
I mean, he is the number one 2RF. He's the best 2RF in the comp at the moment. The way he played last year, what he did for Supercoach, 77-point average, played 20 games, was just a beast, right? And the best thing about it was that we were able to get him really cheap last year off the back of a couple of low games, and then off he went, and we all just went, yep, thank you very much. He's plugged in. I'm sitting there with him. I can't justify 758K on him this time of the year with my problems and what I've got across the board. I just can't put him in. I think there's other guys there. Do I think they're going to score like Angus Crichton? No, I don't think they do. But I just can't afford him. So this is one of those ones where I know Crichton's going to score well. He's going to get big scores. He's going to get around. He's going to continue to keep that 77, maybe push it up a little bit more because he's going to have to do a fair bit more work. But I'm going to have to miss out on it early because I just can't afford him. I can't have him. The other one I'm sort of looking at who's been playing in my team is Suo Wong. Currently 5% owned. I have him at 318K. He's sitting in my 2RF, and I'm eagerly watching to see what happens and the news that happens there, where it is that he's got that spot as a replacement to come in. So I think he does have the other edge from what the word that I've heard. But whether it's still 22nd of January, we're still a fair way away. So I'm eagerly and keen to be watching Suo Wong. And I'm not interested really in anyone else below that. Ethan Roberts has got an 8% ownership, but I don't know much about and why that is because I don't reckon he's going to play. I don't think he's going to be there. So you're looking at it.
He's enough. He's a dual enough.
Yeah, I'm just.
He's the Viliami Kickow of last year. Oh, Fafita, sorry, the Viliami Fafita of last year.
I look. My opinion is, and people have asked me about this, is I don't want enough until Origin. So I need as much and as many people in my team playing and making cash. And allowing me to build my bank and do what I need done and fill my spots. I can't afford to have just one. This year, I can't afford to just have one. I can't afford one enough just yet to start the year. It just doesn't make sense to me. So it doesn't. I just don't get it. But yeah, that's it for me for the 2RF.
With the with the edge, it's so Wong. It's white. You see what I did there? Thank you.
God, that was incredible. Good job.
That's your team name.
Thank you.
So
that
long.
That's your team name.
That is actually really good. Yeah, that should be up there.
Thank you.
Forget inch at a time.
And you should use White. You should use the name White, WHYTE, just to match the Roosters name too.
That's what I was doing. That's the whole thing.
Just straight over. Oh, God, love it. So the question on the screen there is who partners Angus Crichton on the edge there? And so you believe it's Sia Wong?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I'd love to see it.
Can I
super high?
Just quickly before you move on to that, just one more thing I want to mention with Angus Crichton. I actually can make so many valid arguments why I actually think he'll score more this year. he will do more work. That's the crazy thing. When I'm with Trav, I just can't get there, and it pains me. I can't. I'm just going to be watching, just hiding behind a pillow whenever the Roosters play. Just like, oh, don't get the ball to Angus. Don't get the ball to Angus. Then probably look at his score every week, and it's about 85 at least at a minimum. My other only concern with him is just how he gels with a new halves partner for the majority of this year, basically, because it's either going to be Townsend or Sandon Smith that will play on his edge of the field. And obviously had a really good relationship there, built up with last year's halves, and neither of them are there, at least for half the year in Sam Walker. So he's got to adapt. He's got to get used to new halves. And for an edge back row and a half, that's a huge thing. So they'll be working overtime, I'm imagining, at the moment, trying to make sure they're timing the runs and stuff, especially the half, whoever is with him, because they know they'll have the pressure with Angus, who's, in my opinion, probably the best second rower in the competition, if not very, very on par with Liam Martin. And they've got to make sure that they get their passing right, their timing right, because Angus will be there. He's done it all last year. Give him the ball.
Put it to both of you. Overs or unders on a 77 average?
Over.
I'm going over. I'm actually sickly going over, and it's going to pain me to not have him for like majority of the year at the moment, because you won't get him early. Then you'll be thinking Origin, so you'll be like, oh, I'll wear it, and then what? The run home, bring it.
Why not just make it happen?
Because he's so expensive. 758K. It's just too hard. I just don't. I can't find that cash.
Yeah. 5% can. That's a lot of people still, though. I really like it. I've actually had him in a side, and I'm like, oh, shit. It's a lot of money, hey? Like, you start looking at that kind of money in your center wing, and you basically get everyone. And you think, geez, like, where's the upside? Do you chase, you're saving 50K on Karaz? Like, that's it makes it really hard. But yeah, I suppose it really just depends on who the other side is. If it's Wong, then you would have to think Radley's the lock, and then White, where does he play off the bench? Probably half decent minutes anyway. So it just makes Wong even better of an option at 318. And I think that 5%, if that is the case, is going to jump to probably 40, give or take.
There's a surname that the coach loves, and it's Butcher.
Butcher.
I'm very, very concerned about the Butcher brothers and magically appearing at on that 12 jersey. So
they're always
see it happening.
They always pop up. I don't think you can ever get rid of them. And to be fair, Nat Butcher's great.
They've done a job many
look
times,
past him. So. Yeah. But yeah, that's our second row options at the Roosters. Onto the halves. Geez, there's 5 listing, and we've not really got one. So
they need them. They need them.
Yeah. Toby Rodwell, 198. Jake Elliott, the dual halfback, 5'8" at 198 as well. Sandon Smith again with the beautiful dual. Chad Townsend at 421.9 and Sam Walker at 640. So obviously Sam Walker will miss half the season. Really unfortunate. Yeah, well, they're wishful. What a war. Keepers League. Keepers Classic. Chatty Townsend, 421.9 will be the starting halfback at 1% ownership. Any interest there, Trav?
That's a hard no.
Joel?
No.
Yeah,
not going there.
There's very little to sort of touch on in this one. Unfortunately, I don't see a lot of.
We touched on Smith. You could put Smith in your halfback spot as your second player. That's an easy play, but we already spoke about him within the hooker spot. Yeah,
his value is incredible. Obviously, between half, hooker, flex, wherever you want to put him, you just got to have him in your side somewhere. But yeah, I don't want to get involved with Chad Townsend. If he does get the kicking, it might make him a half viable 400k. But again, I like Isaiah Katoa for a bit less. At 390, you know what I mean? And he's going to run that side, and that's a very similar price bracket.
Ilias is another one.
Yeah, and then you can drop down to even Dodd as well. So there's a few cheaper halfbacks with more potential upside than a Chad Townsend. So yeah, 1% valid. I think the halfback slot at the moment without Sam Walker is actually quite dead. So
is it crazy to say? Yep. I think it's more likely that Sandon Smith gets the reins to this team than Chad Townsend. Obviously, last year, towards the back end of the year, I think Sandon Smith had a couple of really good games where he did stand up, and especially once Walker obviously was injured. We remember that finals game that he tore the house down. bit more confidence, probably knowing all throughout the preseason that he's one of the main playmakers there at that team now, if not the main one. Chad Townsend obviously got dropped to reserve grade last year out of nowhere for a lot of people, I feel like. But at the same time, probably didn't have the greatest of form either. So it's not like he's going there, one of the best halves in the competition. He's going there, obviously, gotten on with age. It was always a signing that was a head scratcher for a lot of people when it first happened. Now it worked out well with losing their half that they did in Sam Walker. But yeah, there's a part of me that feels like Sam Smith might be getting that bit more of a role, and Chad Townsend might be taking a bit more of a backward step here.
Yeah, I see it happening. I think he might just, his leadership bit of experience, the age kind of thing might just sort of let him sit back, direct a bit more, and then kind of let Smith just run it all, which would be really nice, and it's obviously going to improve his output even better. So, yeah, positives overall. The 5'8" slot, Jesus, what 5'8" slot? We have one Jake Elliott who probably will not feature, unfortunately. 198K. First time I've ever seen this happen. Nothing. Anything there, boys? 5'8".
Well, it's 4% owned.
Good for enough. I've got him in my side at the moment, actually.
Didn't you say you heard some news about him? He was like in the talk or something?
Yeah, there's talk that he's going to play, or he's going to be there 5'8". So there's a little bit of talk and whisper around that. But I just think to start off with, it'll be Townsend and Smith, and then they'll just see how that plays out and what goes on. Elliott's probably a later play, if anything. But as Jesse said, he's currently in my team, but only because I'm craving a 198K or somewhere. So, look, I'll get him out, but and watch with eagerness, because if he does get picked, there's scoring potential from what I've researched and what I've seen. So there's definitely some eagerness there, but not to start with.
God, everyone at the Roosters is so cheap, isn't they? Jesus. Into the centers, Robert Toyer, bloody hell, 51%. Robert Toyer, 198K. Billy Smith, 317. Mark Nawangwanitawasi, I can't say it. I try.
Gotten very close, mate. Well done. Proud of you.
Close enough. Yeah, I've still got all preseason to worry about it. So 438K. Junior Porga, 604K. Bloody hell. Daniel Tupou, 674. And Dom Young at 701. These positions just getting thinner and thinner, unfortunately. There's not really too many options. Obviously, Robert Toyer, massive talking point, obviously. It seems like he's, in the mix of things more than like Billy Smith is at the moment. So 51% owned, 198K. I think he's kind of the cheapie of dreams if he does get a spot. Is there anyone in this center spot that actually appeals to you boys? Trav?
Toyer, certainly.
Yeah.
And so I've got him. Billy Smith is 25% owned. There's interest in him, but apparently he's disappeared. Like, there's just no talk about him. Like, what's going on? Like, I've tried to research everything, and I can't find anything about him. Apparently, to start off in January, he wasn't even training. So something was screaming to me about having another injury or something. Nawanga Niatasi. Yeah, I reckon I got there. I reckon I got it right the third time.
I don't think so.
Great.
No, I definitely did.
I'll give you that.
I'm certainly keen on him. Holy moly. At 438, I have a feeling that I'm going to run two guns, two cheap 400 players in my center wings, and I'm looking at Karaz Garrick and then Howarth and then Nawanga Tiatasi, and then Laybutt's going into my onto the bench for sure, because I'm just so high on what I think he can do. Apparently he's just killing it, braining it in training. All the talk is that, so I'm very keen on that. And geez, I feel for Daniel Tupou. The dude put out basically 69 points, right? And no one talks about it.
What's that name?
Daniel Tupou. What? Anyways, he's at 69. He basically averaged 68.9 and he's in 0% of teams, and no one talks about him. We didn't talk.
Yeah.
We barely spoke about him last year, and he consistently puts up decent numbers. And then you've got like Dom Young is at 1%. 1% at 700K though. So it's either you take Dom Young at 700K, who averaged 71.6, or you buy Carraz at 702. I know I'm taking Carraz over Dom Young every day, but why? I'm sitting there thinking, why?
Well, you've lost Manu, you've lost Sam Walker. It's a lot of players, you know what I mean? Like Dom Young can do it on any given day. He's actually got quite good base. So there's a lot of losses in that side, and it's just on his end too. So you're thinking like, what's he going to do? You have to expect him to drop a bit. But yeah, Tupou, bloody hell, he's just forgotten, isn't he? He only just averaged less than Dom Young, which is insane. Outscored him in 2 more games, obviously, but yeah, 0%, and it will probably stay like that too. He'll be the pod dream player for the rest of the year. What about yourself, Joel? A couple of these guys on your side?
Yeah, I got Toya. Obviously, whenever that's sort of priced outside back is almost guaranteed an 80-minute spot, it feels like for now, or at least touted by their coach at one point, then everyone gets on. I can't see at the moment what the percentage is of him owned, but I'm guessing it is very, very high, one of the highest owned at this present time. If not, probably need to get on it. But it's a weird one because every other preseason for the last probably 4 years, we keep hearing Billy Smith. I feel like this is, in a way, the Roosters' reverse psychology. Now, he's had a horrible run of injuries, and now if they're not talking about him and they just hype up someone else, we might get a full year of Billy Smith, and that will just be out of this world. He'll be one of the highest owned players in Supercoach within about 4 weeks, I reckon, if we can get some consistent football out of Billy Smith. I reckon he's a gun, and I reckon his Supercoach game would kill it as well. So hopefully that's the case. We do get to see him get through a full year. I think every fan out there would like to see Billy Smith consistent football. Definitely on my radar. The funny thing here is Tupou, Nwanga Wingatasi, and
Exactly what I
Young
said 3 times.
need to be in this team. So 2 of those will be on the wing. So I'm guessing that's going to be Dom Young and Tupou. And then Nwanga Wingatasi, I'm just going to imagine, I haven't heard anything confirmed by this, but I'll be putting him at center.
He's training.
I don't know
center,
if he's
is what I've
a
heard.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not on him yet. I need to watch and wait and see. The other thing I need to mention is no one has mentioned being high on the Roosters this year. But so far in this conversation, we've spoken about possibly 10 guys that almost is in our team. So it's got to be a time where we start to weigh it up as well, because you don't want to have too many of them. We do think the Roosters will struggle, especially early on this year. Not dramatically, like there won't be a wooden spoon team, but there just won't be the Roosters that we have been used to for some time now. And how much is that going to equate to Supercoach points? Because they're missing that those halves steering him around the park, that highly attacking football that someone like Joey Manu can produce for him. They're missing all that. So it's a lot, that intimidation of Jared Rea-Hargraves and that forward in May that can come off the bench and just fix a hole and plug things and just keep going. So they're missing a hell of a lot. And it's just, I want to get a few of these because of the price point, but at the same time, I also want to watch the first few games just to see how things are playing out and probably get past that first 2 games, because that'll be some tough games for them.
Yeah, definitely. So just I'm keen on Nwanga Wingatasi as well. He's in my side. He's got a 64 in his 1 game, and he's priced at a 438. So yeah, it's just it's a watch and see what happens with the Roosters. You know, we expect them to be quieter, and you know, it's a different side. It's a whole different generation of the Roosters now. So there's every potential. There's all a chance that he succeeds and he takes off with it. And I'm happy to roll that dice at his price point. It's not damaging. You don't have to rip your side apart to fit him in there like you would a Dom Young. Say that goes bad, then you've got problems. But I was super keen on Billy Smith before everything came out. I was so keen on him. I was stoked. I was like, yep, Billy Smith. I was expecting his price to be way dearer too, and trying to work out where he's going to sit. Obviously at 317, he was a lock in my side. And now that I'm seeing he's not training, he's barely there, I'm like, I've gotten a lot colder on him. Played 26 games since 2019. He's had a horrible run. Yeah. Has a career average of 47. so value, obviously, but it's just dependent on if he can stay on the park. Like, he just going off that. What's that? 6th year now coming in, played 26 games. It's just, it's a horrible record.
Doesn't that just show you how big the Roosters rate this bloke as well, this kid? Like, anyone else would be long gone. They wouldn't be rude of it, but they'd just be like, realistically, you've played 26 games in 6 years. They rate him that highly, and I think the comp rates this guy that highly. They've still got him there. They're still persisting out of the hope they get like 20 games out of him of the Billy Smith quality that we know he's capable of. Like, huge raps for a club like the Roosters who have just been stacked throughout the years. Obviously, not saying he's on a huge wicket, so it makes it probably a bit easier for the Roosters. At the same time, just to keep that sort of player, it's huge.
Yep, definitely. Priced at 32. Me base is 32. It's only upside. He just needs to stay fit. The final man to really talk about is the one, Mr. Number 1 of Supercoach of 2024, James Tedesco, 920k. Question on the screen here. Surely we can't afford Tedesco. I bloody can't. What about you?
Well, I mean, we can afford him if we skimp out pretty much everywhere else.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the problem, right? I said to everyone last year, I said, and constantly said, geez, I wish I had Teddy, and I owned him for 1 week last year. And I was like, I've just got to do it, but I can't. At 920k, I just cannot do it. I also think that based off what's happening at the Roosters and what's going on, I can't do it either, because I think when Teddy has to play too much, and I think he gets a bit too much of the responsibility, Teddy kind of... I don't know how to talk about it without it sounding nasty. It doesn't rub off in terms of, errors come in. It doesn't rub off in Supercoach plays, right? Teddy's a gun, but when he has to try and do too much, it doesn't relate, and we've got a problem. And Teddy's going to have to do that this year. Granted, this year he's got to do it, and he'll be doing it with on the preface that he's had a whole preseason like this. So he's practicing with the team in the situation that's in, whereas normally when he has to do this, it's because other things have happened throughout the year, and it's just at the click of a finger, I've got to adjust and play. So maybe that changes it, but still at 920k on history that says when he's got to do too much, I don't want to take that risk.
Yeah, Joel, anything to add on that?
He's my flex. No, he's not. He's not my flex. That would be the ultimate flex. The ultimate flex right there. No, I'm with Trav. Literally copied my point. I was going to literally say it from word. Normally, when we hear that like a player has to step up and play more, we love it. We lick our lips and go, "Yeah, we need to get that guy. That's going to need more points." But for Tedesco, unfortunately, I go back to 2023 Tedesco, where he started to get a bit of criticism, and that was purely because of that reason. He started to overplay his hand, got too involved. And unfortunately, at the start of this year, for the first 12 or 13 weeks, he's going to have to play similar to that due to the injuries and the player departures, I think. The lack of potential quality around as well. So, yeah, it's too much. If he was around the 800 mark, maybe entertaining it, but again, it's just the whole, because I know what Tedesco's like when he has to overplay, it definitely scares me off.
Yeah, it's a lot of money when there's so many question marks around it to spend. If it was a lot more stable, if the side was locked in and you knew what to expect, really, you'd be like, yeah, I can spend that kind of money. He was a freak last year. And I've taken his game against the Dogs, that horrible rainy game where everybody got binned. I've taken that game out of his average. And last year, he, barring that game, if you just played like every other one, he would have scored, he averaged 98.3.
Like that one game pushed it up another 4 points.
Yeah.
Damn.
Because every other score that he got was basically 100, except that one, which was just horrid. So, yeah, it was a freak of a year, but was that a freak of a year, or was the 2023 year an anomaly of a blip of a bad run for Tedesco? And do we see him just keep rolling? Because if we do, man, I think people are going to flock to him. The Origin selection, obviously, that's not really there for him anymore. I think Edwards has kind of got that now. He definitely deserves it. It's going to be his. But I've had a look briefly forward anyway. I think the Roosters got a real nasty bye period over Origin. They missed the first 2 games, I believe, and then half their squad's obviously gone when it comes to it. So you got Angus gone.
So
Yeah,
round 10.
What? Yeah.
Round 10, round 14, round 17.
Yeah, it's not good. And then obviously you've got the Origin thing to contend with too. So it could be quite a while before we see him. It could be after that break in general. Even though he hasn't got Origin to worry about, it might not still be a viable play. So yeah, I really hope for it. I do love Teddy. I want to have him in my side again at some point this year. But again, to start with, it's just bloody dear.